Hi there, Harold. How are you?
Hey, Ron. How am I doing?
You're doing just great. So what's new up in Canada?
Well, like I said in my blog, we had a little few inches of snow when I went to Quebec.
Ah, very nice.
That was unbelievable. So
It's been a pretty warm
that's all
winter.
our winter. That's been it. This has been like the year without a winter.
Yeah, I've already got spring flowers beginning to come up. I haven't bloomed yet, but they're coming up.
It's going to be tropical all week, too. So.
Yep. Welcome, Graham and April. Feel free to just chime in whenever you like. Or lurk.
April doesn't have her videos up.
No, I don't have a video camera.
Oh, all right.
She's had one, so.
Sorry about that. It does confuse people.
You could share a picture of your desktop with a rock or something like that.
I haven't figured out how to do some of that yet.
It's not actually that hard if you want to. There's just the button there that says share screen.
Mm-hmm.
And if you click on that, it'll give you a choice of which of the windows that you've got open on your desktop that you want to share. And then when you speak, that'll show up. The rest.
Oh, okay. I was trying to figure out how to get to do my icon at one point. I never figured that out either.
Probably a way of doing that too, but I don't know if that would show up in any size.
Well, I could certainly find a picture.
Yep. Anyway, that's the way I've been sharing Google Earth and things like that, so it works pretty well. I was doing a Hangout over the weekend, and I had a very hard crash, a blue screen of death crash, so I'm a little nervous, but...
That's not good.
Well, I'm less scared of blue screen of death crashes than I used to be. It used to be the end of the computer every time you saw a blue screen of death. Now it's usually just a crash of some sort that's fairly easy to recover from. So...
Yeah. Okay.
Still, it's disturbing when you're in the middle of doing something and all of a sudden, bang!
Okay, I can try that one.
Hey, there you go. Got your icon. Now we know exactly.
Yeah.
Visual reminder.
Yeah, visual reminder of who I am.
Yes.
Not the best, but...
That'll do. So, just looking through the Twitter links this morning, and I know there was somebody pitching a book with climate things that were going to happen as a result of climate change. And it was, I think, things that had all a scientific basis, but he was overhyping them for the sake of selling his book. Have you run across that one?
No, I haven't.
Then it's probably not worth discussing because...
I think that's pretty standard.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Everything.
Yeah, unfortunately.
There were some earthquakes, I guess.
Yeah, I know there was one in Russia over the weekend.
Yeah, middle of nowhere. I think it was near that explosion, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, it's not that far from Baikal. So, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's certainly not walking distance. But it was almost undoubtedly part of the India-Asia collision as far as a large-scale cause.
Yeah, the outer zones, the extensions and stuff, I guess.
A decidedly unusual plate boundary in as much as it's not a tightly confined plate boundary.
And in a similar place, they had their little earthquake in France in the Alp zone, which is the sort of a micro Himalayas with Italy jamming in.
They're, yeah, you don't think they're micro when you're climbing them. I can tell you that. I've done death marches in the Alps with Lucas Baumgartner leading, and yeah, they're no Appalachians. Yeah, but other than that, earthquake-wise, it's been quiet. Even my good old standby, El Hierro, is really lapsing down to silence. I think that eruption is, if not over, then certainly drawing down. I mean, I thought it was drawing down in mid-December, and then it got a little second wind in January. But I've seen less and less news of it this month. The earthquakes, I mean, the seismic signal has gone basically flatlined. So.
Oh, that's so sad. It's just like me and earthquakes. You know, no earthquakes. It's so sad.
You know where we had a good earthquake storm? Kilauea volcano in Hawaii. There was a storm
100 swarms or something. Yeah.
Northwest side of the caldera, which is they've had swarms there in the past, but it's and in fact they closed the campground at the Namakaipau campground. I think it's Namakaipau. I forget the name of it, but I've camped there before. Yeah, they closed it because it's within the outer structural ring of the caldera, but not within the main area of the caldera that you normally see pictures of. But yeah, this was definitely out along the fringes of that, and I think Atrio declared that swarm dead as of this morning or as of yesterday. So probably just a real small swarm that'll pass in the night and move on.
Oh, dinner calls. I gotta go. Sorry. I'll wait for someone else coming. I hear the doorbell going. All right.
All right. Take it easy. Nice seeing you, Harold. I'm trying to think what else we got in terms of geology news. I've been focused on gigapans mostly for the last couple of weeks. Well, gigapans and job applications and things like that.
Can you explain what that is a little better?
What gigapans are?
Yeah.
Sure. It's a type of photograph. Let me see if I can bring it up and share it. Okay. Because it'll be much more easy to explain if I can give you a visual. Now, what I don't know is how well this will work. So give me a second.
Okay. It's saying a script is not running, so it may crash. If it does, I'll be back.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, and all right. So let's just pull up one of my recent galleries. That's not my gigapan. That's a pretty nice gigapan. Let me pull up mine though, because I know where the interesting things are in it. And I'll try and go full screen. All right, now just a second while I share this. I can share this. So far, it hasn't been terribly exciting. Let's see if it gets any more. Oh, it might not work this way. Are you seeing the shared screen? You're seeing the shared screen?
Yeah.
Okay. But now the interesting question is, can I go full screen with that? And I will try. I don't know if you'll see that as full screen. Are you seeing that?
It's pretty good size, yeah.
All right. I don't think, though, that you're seeing the full detail as I zoom in. You're still seeing the same image that I began with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not working this way. Let me try going back to the other view and see if... Okay, so that refreshed. There we go. So it won't work in the full screen view, although if you want to look at your own browsers, you can do this.
Mm-hmm.
But these are huge, huge pictures you can zoom around in.
Uh-huh.
Zooming in on this picture, and you can see the two rafters.
Yeah.
Bottom of the goosenecks at San Juan.
Mm-hmm.
And I come back, and we can see the overall view where we started.
Is that part of the Snake River?
No, this is actually the San Juan River. It's a tributary of the Colorado River in southern Utah.
Okay.
In fact, it's just on the horizon here, and this is one of the great things about the zoom. So let's see if I can do this properly. Monument Valley is just south of here.
Oh.
Kind of hidden by this hill, but you can see a few of the peaks of Monument Valley out there on the horizon. So basically southern Utah, northern Arizona. The nearest town here is Mexican Hat, Utah. And what was I saying about it? Well, the point of the Gigapan is that you've got these massive images that you put together by stitching hundreds to can even literally be thousands of individual images all shot with a high level of zoom. You shoot them in a grid, and the way that you're able to make this grid work well is by using a Gigapan robot, which is a robotic head that you put on a tripod and then you mount your camera on top of that. Mm-hmm. So I actually got involved with Gigapan in the fall of 2007 as one of the pilot scientists to try and explore scientific applications for Gigapans. And I've been very active shooting Gigapans ever since then. And just in the last month or two, I've been working on compiling big galleries of Gigapans, not just my own, but other people's as well. Mm-hmm. So they're really wonderful teaching tools. They can actually have research utilization as well. Got a question there?
Yeah, one of the nice things that I saw using Gigapans was the granodiorites that you had with the
yes.
Mineralogical zoom-ins. That's a really nice way to identify some hand specimen minerals.
Let me pull one of those up. Actually, that's about 4 or 5 pages. Actually, the easier way to do that is to go to my own galleries first. A pretty early one. Yeah, the rocky mineral macros, and the very first one here. Giant forest granodiorite is one of the ones I was most pleased with.
Yeah,
because you really can zoom in, and yeah. And this one I loved because this was not intentional. I just discovered it after I shot the thing. The plagioclase here, you can actually see the striations on the cleavage surface.
Wow.
That's right.
Which is just, I mean, you normally have to look through a hand lens to see that. And here I got the little plastic ruler in the field of view, and you can see that each of those is a millimeter subdivision. So you're getting detail on the order of tens of nanometers.
Do you want to show the small fleck of gold that you'd identified?
Well, I don't know if I actually found any gold, but there was definitely some pyrite. Let's see if
I saw the pyrite, but on the left-hand side, I think you maybe question marked it.
Is that the one you're thinking? Whoops, it's not coming in just yet. Give it a second. There it is. Is that what you were thinking of? Or a different piece? I can't remember.
It's a while since I looked at it, but I think it was the thumbnail was over on the left-hand side.
I see the one that's labeled gold. I didn't think it was actually gold. Somebody else had identified that, but I mean, I assume that's. My own presumption was that that's pyrite that's fractured a little unusually. Yeah, but I think that's the piece that you were referring to. That's somebody else labeled it gold with a question mark.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, it's amazing the things that you see. Not all of which are geological. There's even the little bit of fibrous root hairs in here, which really gives you a good sense for how much detail there is in these root fibers in there.
I've been using Google Earth for some things, but I definitely don't get that good of detail.
Well, this is the really spectacular thing, and I made a post about this over the weekend because we just discovered an issue. You can actually view Gigapans within Google Earth.
Oh.
And let me pull up, well, let me stop sharing this page for just a second so that you don't have to see all the machinations while I move over to Google Earth.
I know there was an interesting, if I could figure out how to use it for the Hayward Fault, where you could
Yes, there's a really nice kind of virtual field trip for the Hayward Fault.
Yeah, and I played around with that.
And I was just, well, I've got a lot of these geopans in Google Earth, but let me see if I can find it that illustrates this nicely. If I go to the Tetons, I love my Mount Moran. So let me share. Oops, I lost the window. The window is buried. Share screen. Google Earth, that's the one I want. Now, you can see just generally where that's located. Are you seeing that? I should change.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, but you're seeing the white box there, or are you actually seeing what's in the white box?
Just
No,
the white
just seeing
box.
the white box.
Yeah. Okay. So let me enter the panorama here. I'm going to click on. Well, you can't even see it, but it's linked to click on the. Come on. Is that working? May not even be working. Let me try that again. But right now it's zooming into this particular panorama. And after it has a chance to build Google Earth in behind that, you'll see the real value of this.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so there's the wide view of the Gigapan of Mount Moran. And in a second there, you see the topography is now popping up behind it.
Yep.
You're all seeing that?
Yeah.
And if I use the transparency slider in Google Earth, I can actually make my picture transparent so you can actually see the mountain behind it, and then move the transparency slider back. And then you can zoom in. And this will take a second while it's zooming before you'll see anything. Okay, let me zoom a little further. And a little further still. I'm moving in on this one slowly because I found if you zoom too fast, you can't keep up. Okay, so by the time that settles down, do you recognize what you're looking at there? Nobody? Well, there's the edge of a cloud, for one thing, on the top
Yeah, I
right.
can see the dark line.
Just a dike, just a major dike.
Yes. That's one of these Precambrian dikes, late Proterozoic dikes that cross-cuts some of the Wyoming terrain up in that region. And what's more, so most of Mount Moran is older Precambrian, I think maybe even Archean. Very old granitoids and metamorphic rocks. But there's also this little bit of slightly yellowish stuff with the snow patches on top. Do you see that? That's actually the Cambrian flathead sandstone.
Oh.
And as a result, so there's an unconformity there below the Cambrian rocks. There's just that little remnant of Cambrian rocks at the top of Mount Moran. But this is actually one of the lines of evidence that's used to measure the range of uplift across the fault that bounds Mount Moran and Jenny Lake here toward in the foreground. Well, not in the foreground of this picture. But I forget how much total offset there is, but it's something on the order of like 40,000 feet. So you're losing that screen. So let me take it back. Anyway, so these gigapans are spectacular for being able to zoom in, see great amounts of detail, and then, of course, putting them in Google Earth makes it even more exciting, to my mind.
Absolutely. One of the nice things I've got going on Google Earth is the overlay, the USGS US-wide geological map.
Yes.
And that's an excellent way to get a real quick home in on what the geology is for any particular area. So I've just brought Mount Moran up right now, and just being able to see that in the context of all the different lithologies around it.
Exactly. You know, I would really love to see a lot more detailed geologic maps brought into Google Earth. This is actually something that is actually made harder to do by the fact that the U.S. Geological Survey, they've made this National Geologic Map database, but in the process of gathering all these public domain geologic maps, when they built the database a decade or decade and a half ago, there were not tools like GigaPan around to allow one to zoom. And so what they did is they used a technology called Mr. SID. And I don't know, it's an acronym for something, but the fact is it's a really hard to find viewer, and they didn't actually make so they scanned all these maps. They scan them as TIFF files, but they present them on the website as Mr. SID files. Yeah, there's the Tetons, indeed. And the problem there is that I can't take a Mr. SID directly into Google Earth. So in order to actually get a scanned geologic map of the USGS originally scanned in a TIFF format, I actually have to take the Mr. SID and I have to decode it, put it into a JPEG format or a GeoTIFF format, and then try and bring that into Google Earth. And it's just a pain because it's a very slow download, and then you got to go through a number of steps on each one of these things. There's just so much more potential there that
their site was down this last week. I was trying to use it to verify a few faults, and when you would click on the one where you could click on the fault lines and get the names and all that, it was down. It wouldn't. They were gone. It was like everything was gone.
The USGS site you're referring to, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm hoping they're updated.
Yeah, I was going to say, have you checked it again since then? Because, I mean, it might have been down just for intermittent thing, or it might have been a link that's gone stale. I don't know.
Might have been. I know it was still down yesterday when I was having other computer problems, so I haven't checked it since then, since the other problems came back up.
I also have to remind myself all the time when I see problems like this to remind myself to reboot the router.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's on my end, but nonetheless.
I checked 2 different computers, 3 different browsers, and there was actually some weird code that was blocking a lot of sites yesterday, and then when it finally, whatever, fixed, the other site came back up, but I never went back and checked.
That's interesting. I don't have a good answer for that, but it's certainly disappointing if that site's not accessible. So, Ron, you're new to the group here. Say hi and introduce yourself if you want to, or feel free to just lurk too.
No, I have had an interest in geology for a long time. I was in my productive life, I was a chemist and did computer chemistry for the last 15 years. And then after I retired, I taught geology for 1 year because I had a minor in it.
Oh.
I taught at a school up in Michigan, Saginaw Valley State University.
Okay.
And then I got called away from that, from family crisis sort of thing. My mother got ill and I had to go out and stay with her. So after that, I retired and moved to North Carolina, so I don't live up in Michigan anymore. I have a large mineral collection, relatively large, not monstrous, but a relatively large mineral collection. I cut and facet gemstones and other types of stones, and I published one book called Agates and Jaspers, which I put out in 2009.
Very nice. Yeah, you're definitely down in the in line with the Jasper sort of rocks that are coming down from Canada. The glaciers would have brought some of those down to Saginaw.
Well, yeah, at that time, yeah, there's probably more agate and jasper from the glaciers in the Michigan area than I'm finding in North Carolina. North Carolina is pretty devoid. It's old bedrock, and there's lots of minerals here, but not much in the way of jaspers and agates.
Yeah. I know this because I actually am a Michigan expatriate as well. I taught for 3 years at Superior State University in the Upper Peninsula.
Oh, yeah.
And so I've seen actually some of the source rocks for some of your jasper bearing stuff, and I've seen lots of glacial erratic boulders of it on St. Joseph Island on the north end of Lake Huron there.
Actually, in the Upper Peninsula, there's one thing I haven't found anywhere else, and actually I've never found any, but I've seen lots of it up there, was the agate with the copper inclusions in it.
Yeah, I've seen in museums glacial erratic pieces of copper. I've never actually seen any in the field. I would love to, of course, find that, but yeah. Not so much on the eastern end of the Upper Peninsula. That would be more out in the Keweenaw Peninsula.
Yeah.
But out of there. I assume you've got some good Petoskey stones there in your collection as well, too.
Petoskey? Not one of my favorites.
Well, but it is a Michigan rock. I'm sure you can't avoid collecting a few of them.
I used to have shopping bags full of it.
Yeah.
And we use it to teach the kids how to cut or polish stones by just using sandpaper on it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not one of my favorite stones, however.
It turns out to be a nice teaching sample. I use it all the time, but I never actually collected enough to have it as a throwaway sample.
I posted today on the macro, what do they call it, Macro Monday. I posted a vanadianite on goethite sample that was a fairly decent sized picture. And I also then on the same section I also posted one more, which is a faceted piece of quartz that has either stibnite or jamesonite incorporated in it.
Nice. Are these all finds that you made yourself or purchases? Or?
No, these were purchases. These are both the ones from Morocco, the vanadinite, and the other one is from Brazil, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I used to make the trip out to Tucson and quartzite every year for the last 5 out of the last 7 years. So,
April, it looks like your fault map is coming up there. Yes? Or it's loading?
Nope, it says loading, and it'll stay loading like that.
No.
And no lines on it. No faults
Yeah,
visible.
no faults. Are they using Google Maps as their base map?
I don't know. I know that's for the last 3 days that it's done. The Fault Maps interactive application is what is not working.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if that might have been something that got developed a couple of years back and they were using an older version of Google Maps API, and it could be that that's never been updated. How recently have you used that successfully?
It's been at least a few weeks since I've used it. I couldn't tell you.
Because I'm pretty sure Google Maps deprecated one of their APIs this year, or within the last couple of months anyway. I could be wrong about that, but anyway, it looked like it was using that kind of interface. That's a possible explanation. I don't know.
It's using an older one, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I wish I knew somebody at the USGS who was involved in their website / mappings. I don't have any direct connections there, so I don't know what to tell you.
Okay.
Luis, welcome. Are you just lurking, Luis?
I'm a little curious about what is this? This is the first time I've been in a Hangout that has quote-unquote Hangouts with extras.
Right. So there was a while when the screen sharing was only available in Hangouts with extras. And I gather that was popular enough that they put it into the mainstream Google Hangouts now.
Okay.
The other things that you can do with Hangouts with extras, I think this capture moment button that you see next to the share screen.
That's new.
Is new. They're testing it. Basically, it's the beta version of Google Hangouts where they test new things.
Okay.
The reason I'm still using it is primarily for the fact that you can give Hangout a title, where you can't do that with the regular Hangouts. And so as far as I know, it's the only good way to let people know kind of what the Hangout is about.
Okay.
By giving a title, unless they know who you are and what you're doing all the time. I would like them to put that titling ability into the regular Hangouts, and I'd probably use that. Of course, I'd also like them to put the recording ability into it and the sharing ability into it and all the other things that are still very limited in their distribution.
Well, you've got, I mean, I don't know, but I've got software on my own system that I can grab any combination and put it in a video and save it. So
yeah, in fact, I'm actually, I don't know if you saw the comment that I made on my original post, is that I am actually recording this.
yeah.
So one of these little blank screens over there on the right is actually a phantom Ron Shot, who's actually my laptop over here to my left, recording the entire conversation. And the advantage to doing it on a second computer there is that that silent partner is basically seeing in the mainframe whoever's talking. Instead of, for example, when I'm talking now in my computer that I'm looking at here, I'm seeing Graham because he was the last person who talked before me. So instead of me having to actually be a director with this, the second computer basically has it all taken care of.
Yeah, on my big screen, or on the big window right now, I see nothing. It's pure black. I see you only on the small one.
And that's because April was the last person to talk before you, and she's got the black screen. And so yes, that'll happen. And that's
Okay.
That's just par for the course. And I had to do quite a bit of experimentation to get the right setup. I've screwed up more than one recording in the past. But I do like to kind of archive these, because every once in a while we get into a really good conversation, or somebody asks a really bright question, and it's nice to have that to refer to. So I'll probably end up converting it over and saving it on YouTube and then posting in another day or two. So, and there's April again.
Sometimes I like to re-listen to them later because you hear things that you missed.
Sure, yes, and that's another nice thing about it. I mean, I'd actually love to do a lot more with this technology. One of the things that I've really wanted to do was a little bit more professional sort of hangout, where you would, for instance, get a couple of geologists who had just published an article, for example, and maybe bring in, 2 or 3 of the authors on that article, plus maybe another person who was, I don't know, something critical to say about the article, or somebody else could contribute an expertise, and have a kind of talk show, but on a more professional geology topic. But I've yet to actually convince enough geologists with that kind of academic interest to get onto Google Plus and use it.
I think 1 or 2 people who run astronomy podcasts have invited professionals on, and I found that a thoroughly engaging format. So I think it would be great if you could take that forward, what you've suggested in the geological side.
I've actually blogged about that, and there is a handful of geologists who are regular Twitter users and who have dabbled at least in Google Plus that have expressed some interest. And right now, though, it's still that relatively small handful. In fact, I was getting ready to start a regular series last fall, and the week that I was ready to start on Friday was the same week that in the Twitter sphere something erupted about, I forget what it was, something that was about the male to female ratio in some sort of a professional publication or something like that. I forget the specific. It was the woman space thing in Nature. If you remember, that there was a Nature editorial from geologist from South Africa who had written something that I think he thought was kind of tongue-in-cheek about the differences between the sexes and how they think scientifically and not. And it was, in fact, just incredibly tone-deaf and very offensive to quite a number of folks. Anyway, it was that very week that I was planning to start this more professional sort of show. And, of course, although I had opened the invitation to anyone, all the people that I had gotten responses from were male geologists.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a very inauspicious week to begin a new series by stepping in exactly the problem that affected the previous. So I backed off. I tried to put out some feelers to some female geologists, and that may happen, but it's part of this is also that I'm in kind of state of flux right now. I'm currently looking for a job, and so I also am hesitant to start a series where I may have to be uprooting myself in another month or two, and once I get a more stable spot, I'm definitely more inclined to do that. But yeah, I think the idea is a great one.
Can I ask you if you're the only guy out there doing this sort of thing in the geological sphere, or are others? Do you know?
As far as the actual hangouts for geology office hours, I'm the one who started it, and I don't know of anybody else doing it.
Right, right.
There are a number of other geologists who have joined in and contributed to this over the last couple of months, but nobody else, to my knowledge, who has done it, at least publicly. Yeah. I know there are a few people who have done it privately for office hours with students.
Yes, yes.
But I've yet, because I've not been one of their students, I've yet to actually see one of those or how it went. Yeah, in fact, I stopped for about a month here, but otherwise I've been doing it on a pretty regular basis, Mondays and Thursdays. I'm trying to get back into the swing of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, yes.
I mean, I was just catching up, but this is my first time on, and I've spent the last 2 or 3 days just catching up on some of the back broadcasts, and it's been excellent. Some of just the range of things that you've covered. And I was particularly interested in the discussion you had 2 or 3 weeks ago about academic publishing. And in fact, there have been some interesting developments since that broadcast. And I was interested to see whether you had any views on the latest online petition for academics to withdraw their support from one particularly high-profile academic publisher.
I don't mind saying Elsevier is the name of that publisher. And although I am not a signatory to that particular petition, I also am not contributing any articles to Elsevier for them to publish. I'm very much a champion of open access.
Yes.
And I would personally, this is one of those things where I have strong personal views on the subject, but I also don't want to try and say everybody has to have the same views.
Yeah, sure.
And so I would be very reticent to publish at this point in my career in a non-open access journal. I also have the luxury, shall we say, of not being supporting a family besides myself. The jobs that I'm applying for now are primarily for community college non-research type jobs because, although I published all my PhD research, none of it was actually relevant when it came time for tenure. So, yeah, I don't feel good lecturing to people about, how they should conduct their own publications. Sure. But I'm definitely a champion of open access. At the same time, I also have to say, one of the jobs that I applied for last year was for a social media position with the Geological Society of America. And I can see things from the publisher's side of it where they clearly have to have a sustainable business model. Now, it doesn't have to be the one that they currently have, and one could certainly debate with them whether that's the best model. But in order to maintain, an editor, a print publishing structure, there are clearly costs involved with that. Maybe not warranting the kind of profits that Elsevier is making. But
Sure.
you know, I would not want a publisher to just abandon print publication because of its cost. I mean, that's certainly one alternative. And I think if I were in a publisher's position, I'd be worried about brand new journals coming up as online only and just simply sucking the breath out from the existing journals.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things that occurs to me is that the strength of a journal is based on its reputation and the standing in the geological, in the scientific community. Mm-hmm. And the more traction open access journals acquire, the less tendency to always want to go straight to Nature or Earth and Planetary Science Letters or whatever. And so there'll be a natural tendency, I think, over time for prestige to accrue to some of the more recent open access journals. And when that happens, the power of the established journals will begin to wane.
I agree, and I think this is really a fairly critical time for these publishers, especially the societies who are not for profit anyway.
Yes.
Because there's an opportunity here for them to be the first big open access publisher. And that opportunity is not going to be around forever. And if they're not the one who gets that critical mass of authors right away, they could very easily lose a lot of their status. But for me, the main reason that I personally am so strongly in favor of open access is in part from, I taught most recently at Fort Hays State University, which is in western Kansas, has master's level programs, but library gets the major journal, but not all the major journals. While there's good interlibrary loan, now that I'm unemployed, I have access to almost none of that.
Yes.
And there's a great, one of my big pushes in recent years as I've got to really embrace the internet is, like I'm doing with this Geology Officers Hangout, there's a lot of people out there in the general public that have an interest in geology. And if you don't provide those people, and I'm speaking now here as kind of a community of scientists, if we don't provide those people with the information that they're searching for, they're going to find other sources of information that may be less reputable, and that's a real problem in my mind. Yeah. And I think, even if you just set aside the argument that, the taxpayers have already funded this research, even if you set aside the economic argument there's a real responsibility here that geologists at least make their work accessible to people who have an interest, because, there are real societal issues that are being decided based on very limited access to the real science behind them.
Since I retired, I found it basically impossible to get at scientific literature.
Yeah.
I moved to North Carolina now, and there's UNC Charlotte, which is up the road, and I've been up there, and indeed I can get in, and they'll tolerate me in their library, and I can get online and get some things as long as I use them online in the library. Right. But that's a 30-minute drive each direction to get up and get back again. And so it's very hard to get at just articles on geology in general.
Well, I'm sorry, Ron. What I was going to say is that the search engine that Google supplies for academic publishing, Google Scholar, is actually becoming increasingly valuable. It's certainly over the last 5 years. And that's because certainly in the United Kingdom, there's now a directive which requires publicly funded, in this case geological research, to be placed in university repositories. And Google Scholar picks those papers up. So even if you don't actually access the specific paper that you're trying to find because it's behind a paywall, my experience has been you usually find an allied or related paper gives you much the same information that you're looking for that actually is in the public domain through one of these repositories. And I think that is going to grow more and more. So although it is difficult to find this stuff, increasingly it is becoming available.
That's certainly true, and I mean the trend I think is fairly clear to anybody who's been watching the internet and the wild growth of this. You know, it's never fast enough for those who are living on the bleeding edge like me. But I think, you know, if we look back in 10 years, we'll be in a much better situation as far as access goes. But it's going to be tough getting over that lip for some of those societies, especially when their whole business model is built on, you know, subscribers as being a big portion of it. It's not that subscriptions have to go away, because there's good reason to continue to do that. But yeah, it's a big change in mindset that has to happen, and it's a question of whether the current publishing group will be leaders or followers. And they look to the music industry. They can see what happens when they're followers.
Well, you made a pertinent comment on a previous broadcast where you said that you felt that there was no need for either the scholarly societies or indeed the mainstream publishers to keep behind paywalls papers which are 15, 20 years old.
Right.
I mean, I've been trying to, just out of interest, I've been trying to go back and find some of the seminal papers from the early days of plate tectonics, you know, Dietz, Morgan, and so forth. Yep. These are papers authored in 65, 61, or what have you. They're still behind the paywall. I mean, I just don't see the logic of that. And I think you're right. If one of the learned societies said, like the GSA, was going to make its archive available, you know, say from 5 years ago or further back, then that would really send out the right message.
And I tell you, from a very practical standpoint, one of the things that they could do that would earn them some actual money is what National Geographic has done with their magazine. National Geographic now sells sets of DVDs that have scans of all the magazines back to 1888. And as somebody who's about to move out of my current house and probably have to move halfway across the country, I can tell you that I really don't feel terrible about getting rid of my print copies of National Geographic magazine, because I know I can get the DVDs and have all that material. And I'm glad to pay National Geographic for that opportunity. I have dozens of boxes of Geology, GSA Bowl, Tectonics, JGR, a whole lot of journals that I really would much rather have some electronic sort of access to. And I would gladly pay those societies, even though I already own copies of those things. I pay them for the convenience of having either a hard disk or access to the full online set or what have you. That's just a huge thing, because otherwise, I mean, what's going to happen to these journals? I know the department here doesn't have room to store them, so I can't even leave them with the local university. They're basically destined for the trash if they don't go with me.
Sure.
Lee, looks like you're new on the call. Feel free to say hi and introduce yourself if you'd like. You may be muted.
Yeah, I was muted. I was just listening in. I saw the word geology, and I had to drop in. I'm just
wonderful.
A total amateur, but I love the subject.
Good. That's good. I mean, that's why this is open to the public. You know, we want to answer questions from people and just you know, have a nice chat. Anything that's of interest to you. Yeah. So, what part of the country are you doing your geology in?
Well, Dayton, Ohio.
Okay.
Yep.
The platform. Good fossils out in that part of the world.
Yes, yes.
I did
oh, the Natural History Museum here has the giant trilobite. I think it's one of the largest ever found.
Yep.
Here in Dayton. Well, it's found in this area, but the Dayton Museum of Natural History has it. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, our local geology museum, Sternberg Museum of Natural History, has, of course, all these wonderful Kansas fossils, the monster clams and the fish within a fish and mosasaurs. And of course, that's not my area of expertise in geology. I'm an igneous, metamorphic, well, hard rock geologist anyway.
Yeah.
So
I have a son that lives in Arvada, Colorado, and I love to go to that cut on I-70.
Oh yes.
Yes. I know so little about it, you know, but it's just so fascinating, and that whole area with the flatirons and what have you.
You missed earlier, one of the things I was talking about earlier was gigapans, and that road cut. Give me just a second here, and I'll pull up a gigapan I've shot of that road cut that you're more than welcome to explore at your leisure. Is that going to even work for us here? A lot more gigapans with the name Morrison in there than I realized.
I don't want to take time out of your conversation here, but if some of you would just type in the chat there, introduce yourselves, I'd be glad to learn a little more about you, who you are.
One thing you can do is if you just mouse over pictures on the right-hand side there, you'll actually see our names.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm Ron.
In extras, you can't click on them.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. Yeah, in extras you can't click on them, and I searched for your name. Is it Ron? And
yes.
I just didn't have any luck. So you may be an alias, are you?
No, Ron Shot. Nothing.
Oh, it's Shot. I couldn't. Yes. I'm old too. I can't read.
No, that's okay. That's perfectly all right. In fact, you'll see two of me if you mouse over on the right-hand side there.
Yeah, I saw that.
One of me is actually just the recording going on so that I can post this up to YouTube.
Yeah, later. I understand. Ah, yes, there you are.
And meanwhile, I still can't.
Are you located in Kansas, Ron?
That's correct.
Yes, I've been in this room before then sometime.
Oh, okay. All right, fair enough. I've actually taken about a month off after doing these pretty regularly throughout the fall and early winter. And I'm going to try and get back to doing this on a regular basis. Again. So we'll have lots more opportunities. There's my gigapan.
So what fascinates you in Kansas?
Very little. Sorry to say that, but actually, I have to say, before I came to Kansas, I've been here about 8 years now. Before I came to Kansas, though, I grew up outside New York City, did my undergrad in New York State at Colgate University, did my master's and PhD at Wisconsin-Madison, and then had teaching jobs in Kentucky and Michigan before coming out here. And so one of the things I had no appreciation of, or very little appreciation of, was the fact that the center of the United States here under the Great Plains is not, in fact, completely devoid of outcrops. In fact, there's plenty of bedrock here near the surface. And you know, I guess in my East Coast mindset, I just figured, well, it was all just covered with sediment. But in fact, there's plenty of good geology out here if you like things like chalk. And in fact, chalk is one of those things that you don't find along the east coast of the west coast of the U.S. with any great quantity. Speaking, of course, with some of our participants here from England, I'm sure chalk is much more familiar to you. But anyway, it's one of those things that I know I've had to correct people when they say, you know, chalk is like unheard of in the United States. In fact, it's all you got in my neck of the woods. But let me just take a second here to share the screen. got the Gigapan up there. Have you seen Gigapans before, Lee?
Not that I know of, and I've got a terrible cold, so I'm muted a lot here just so I don't drive you crazy with my coughing.
That's fine. Are you looking at the window with the picture of that outcrop that you recognize? You see
Yes, I do.
the Morrison Road cut there. Yes.
In fact, my grandson was married just a mile or so from there, not too far from Red Rocks.
Yeah, in the amphitheater there, near the amphitheater.
Well, he wasn't married in the amphitheater, but at a facility right next to it.
Yeah. So what I can do with this Gigapan that's really so spectacular, and I enjoy this to no end, is the fact that you can zoom in on this.
Oh, okay.
It's basically one very large photo that's composed of hundreds of individual photos.
Okay.
And then you have the ability to zoom in and see great amounts of detail and zoom around there. And gigapanning is one of the things I've been doing now for a couple of years, and so marrying gigapanning with geology has been just worlds of fun for me.
How fortuitous was it that they made that cut there?
You know, they had to go through that ridge somewhere.
Yeah.
So I think it was going to happen one place or another, and I'm glad they made it where they did. It's a spectacular teaching sample. I wouldn't say my Gigapan there is best. That's really not my best focused Gigapan. But I've got another one of the opposite side of the road cut as well. Although this is, I think, the view that probably most people are used to looking at. So,
some of my interest is a lot more modern than yours. I've been fascinated with the glaciation here in the Ohio area, and we have a lot of evidence of it around here. We've got these giant underground rivers that exist that give us such pure water, and that's been a fascinating. And the glacial grooves up there, almost all gone up in along Lake Erie.
Yeah, I've not actually had a chance to get up there Lake Erie to see them, but I know they're pretty famous.
Mm-hmm. There's only very few left. They mined it for the limestone.
Mm-hmm. And Graham, I can see you're sharing the geology right there along the Front Range.
Yeah.
That Dakota hogback runs right along the fault there at the edge of the Denver Basin, where the Front Range is uplifted. And those rocks in that particular road cut are basically Mesozoic in age. They go from Jurassic up through Cretaceous. It's the Dakota sandstone that holds up that hogback ridge. And the Morrison Formation is what I was searching on. And the town of Morrison is, in fact, right at this exit on the interstate. So
that was the town in which Matt was married in a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
So it's pretty near the type locality for the Morrison Formation, which, of course, is world famous for its dinosaur fossils.
Great.
Yep.
I was listening to a podcast just this morning, or was it yesterday, about the geological activity on the moon. That's far astray from maybe your interests, but there's a lot of speculation on what all those ridges and grooves are on the far side of the moon.
It was very interesting. In fact, I saw the pictures, and the pictures tell a big chunk of the story, because what you were seeing was Graben formation that was cross-cutting impact craters, suggesting fairly young tectonic deformation on the moon. I didn't read the details of the article, so I couldn't tell you a whole lot more than that, but the photo was pretty convincing. I mean, you saw relatively young-looking craters with normal faults, Graben sort of scarps going across them. So, yeah, it was pretty neat.
Is this a recently acquired image?
I believe so, and I don't know the details on that. Maybe you can comment on that. No.
Well,
it was in just a week or so ago.
One of the things I learned in the podcast that the Earth, they say, is the only planet that has plate tectonics.
As we know it here on Earth.
I mean, as far as we know.
Yeah. Venus pretty clearly has some style of tectonics, although it's not like modern-day Earth plate tectonics. And the other planetary bodies, at least in the inner solar system, are all small enough that they're mostly geologically dead. And I refer to Mercury and the Moon and Mars there. At least from a tectonic standpoint. Go ahead.
Ron, I seem to recall reading, some years ago now, some accounts of Venus's geology which relate to regular resurfacing events.
Yes.
That every so sort of 500 million years, what have you, there's a major volcanic outpouring, and it effectively resurfaces the planet. And there was a degree of controversy at the time about whether, in fact, that did actually happen, and I'm not quite sure how it all got resolved.
You know, it's interesting because when I was a graduate student at Wisconsin-Madison, I'm pretty sure I saw a week's end lecture from James Head on exactly that topic. And since that time, I have not been a student of geology. My recollection on like glancing at more recent science articles but not really reading them in depth was that that still is one of the competing hypotheses, although I don't know that it's held in as much favor as when it was fresh and new.
Okay.
I remember that the specific reasoning for that was that the crater density, and this was after the radar missions, Galileo, I believe it was, went to and brought back the radar data. The crater density was considerably less than what one would expect for a 4 billion-year-old planetary surface. And it was consistent all around the surface of Venus in such a way that it appeared that it had been most recently resurfaced. I think it was 600,000 years ago, but something in the neighborhood of half a million years.
500 to 600, and I seem to recall there were some very interesting papers. One in particular where they had produced a pseudo-cratering map of Venus that had been generated basically by some sort of randomized algorithm, which placed craters, and they put that side by side with the actual data from Magellan, and basically challenged the scientific community to pick out which was the real image and which one was the pseudo image, and that helped to prove if you like, illustrate the hypothesis that was being put forward.
Right.
I can't remember any more details than that, but that was kind of a fun paper, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's exactly that kind of very memorable scientific study that sticks in the minds of most of the geologists who are not paying attention anyway on a very regular daily basis.
That's right.
Because that's exactly the sort of thing that I remember about it, and I believe there's more controversy more recently, but I couldn't tell you what the other side of the controversy is. So, yeah.
But isn't there a parallel in some respects with what goes on with large igneous provinces on Earth? I mean, the idea that heat builds up to a certain sort of threshold level, and then you get a very substantial release of heat through widespread magmatic activity. So it's kind of similar in some respects.
So I guess I remember more details than I let on, because I do remember that the working behind this periodic overturn was that it had to do with the overall thickness of the crust, or at least the lithosphere, and the overall lithospheric thickness was thicker on Venus than it is on Earth, and I forget whether that precluded normal style plate tectonics. I think it may have actually precluded it because you couldn't have subduction in the traditional sense.
Actually, Ron, it's coming back to me as well. The key thing that's missing on Venus that you have on Earth is water. And of course, water is a key lubricant to the entire tectonic process on Earth. And I think that was one of the key differentiators.
Indeed, absolutely. Welcome there.
Thank you.
We've actually filled the chat room, which is congratulations to all of you. I haven't done this for a couple months, so glad to see it.
It's science. I'm surprised that they're not signing up on a list.
Well, perhaps we'll build that kind of reputation, and sooner or later we'll have, just people on by invite. But for now, we're open to all comers.
Thank you.
So, two of you, Roberta and Pablo, you both just joined recently. And feel free to introduce yourselves if you've got any questions.
Pablo, you want to go first? I think you were here before I was.
Possibly he's already gone, so perhaps he was just working.
Okay, I'm a science buff, a history buff, an everything buff, and I mean, I really can't make up my mind what I want to be when I grow up.
That's good.
Not geology specifically, but I'm interested in geology because I'm interested in evolution. And my profession is sculptor, but that has very little to do with my daily life.
Okay, well, Roberta, I'm just trying. I'm looking at the reflection in the windows behind you. I'm trying to guess from the foliage what part of the country you're doing your geology in. Just out of curiosity.
Okay, let me see if I'll give you a little more. Let me see.
Don't make it too tough on yourself.
No, can you see?
I can see some grass, some tall grasses there, I think.
Yeah, how about some palm trees? And that palm trees.
Okay, I thought maybe here's
banana trees.
The country has right now. So
I'm in Costa Rica.
Oh, hey, that's neat. We are really drawing from all over the world now.
Yeah.
So
we have tectonic. Yeah, go on.
No, I was just going to ask if you've got any volcanoes within view of you.
Not within view, but if they went off, we would certainly see them.
I'm sure you would, indeed.
Yeah, no, it's very volcanic here. Have to watch out for earthquakes.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, we're building an apartment, and we had to really make sure it was earthquake safe. And of course, we have, I think, 3 tectonic plates all coming together just off the Pacific. So it's interesting, geologically very interesting.
Oh, very much so. And I can see why you would have that interest living there. Have you felt any quakes? I don't know, recently? Or?
Oh yes.
Yes.
About a 6-pointer about 3 weeks ago. But I grew up in California, so it has to get bigger than that to make me nervous.
That's good. One of these days we'll actually have a geologic event happen during one of these podcasts, and it'll be pretty remarkable if we're actually able to record the reactions directly.
Probably here at my house. I don't know where you guys are.
I live in Kansas, so it's pretty unlikely it'll be me.
Okay. Well, I have to make sure I'm online a lot so we can experience it together.
I was actually following. I was actually online watching my Twitter window last November when we had the earthquake in Oklahoma, and in fact, I felt that one here in Kansas. It was about a magnitude 5.6, I think, outside of Oklahoma City.
I remember that.
Just about at the edge of where that was felt, but. When I felt it, I did immediately think earthquake because I felt 1 or 2 previously, and I was able to look over to my Twitter screen and see a colleague of mine who actually is a graduate student in Oklahoma, and he had just tweeted about it, and so I knew right off the bat exactly that I had confirmed it. Had felt it.
But it's unusual in the Midwest, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I think in my lifetime I felt 3 earthquakes. One growing up in New Jersey was on the Ramapo Fault, and I was just out of bed in the morning, or just in bed lying awake in the morning, So I was in like the perfect position to feel a very small one there.
Mm-hmm.
One when I was in the visitor center of the Hawaii Volcano Observatory, sitting in the car, looking at the map, figuring out where I was going to go next.
And if you'd been driving, you wouldn't have felt it.
Exactly, because every time a tour bus went by, you would feel this rumble, and then I'm reading the map, and I feel the rumble, and there's no tour bus going by. And in that case, I was able to go into the museum, to the Jagger Museum, and they have a seismic drum rolling right there in the display area, and sure enough, there was a little squiggle.
Ooh.
So those two quakes were both pretty small quakes overall. So this one that I felt from Oklahoma was the biggest quake that I felt, although I certainly didn't feel it in any large way. And then I actually slept through another big one. I did my PhD research out in California on, well, pretty near the San Andreas Fault, but north of San Francisco. I was actually in Southern California doing a little bit of field work related to this, and it was about 150 miles away from Landers when it went. The magnitude.
150 miles away from where?
Landers?
That was north of San Francisco?
Landers is out in the Mojave Desert east of L.A., and this was 1992, summer of 92. And that was actually a magnitude 7.1, I think, or maybe the high sixes. But I slept through it. My field assistant felt it, but I slept through it.
Oh. Que lástima. What a shame.
Exactly. No, I get a little bit of Spanish, so yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you definitely live, I think, in one of the more exciting places geologically among those of us on the podcast. Most of the rest of us are crotonal interiors of the continents, I guess.
So the one participant who knows the least about geology lives in the most exciting place. Life is not fair.
We can share the vicarious joy. I would imagine the other geologists living in the more exciting places are probably out there experiencing the geology.
I was born and grew up in Southern California, so I lived there for 22 years, and I was through several quakes that were between 7 and 8.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
No, not excellent, but interesting.
Well, you survived them, which is excellent in its own way.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it would be pointless to have an earthquake challenge match here.
I've got a story I can contribute.
Go ahead. Feel free.
I was in Rome when the Aquila earthquake took place a few years back. My wife was on the phone. We lived in Western Rome. And my wife was on the phone at the time to a friend who was on the northern outskirts. And this lady on the northern outskirts first felt the tremors and was able to say to my wife, "Oh, did you feel that?" And those seismic waves came through about, maybe 12, 15 seconds later. And in Rome, it was quite a strong tremor. Pot plants with fronds waving about, and because pot plants are fantastic seismometers, and that was quite an interesting experience to actually experience the time delay of the seismic waves coming through.
Oh my!
Yeah, with all the quakes that I felt, they were so small. There was only one wave to feel, but for that sort of a quake, I would love to experience something like that.
No, you wouldn't.
Well,
I have a question.
Go ahead.
How many of you are aware of the bulge in Palmdale, where they've got the locking of I don't know what you call them,
Plates.
Locking of the plates, and or at least there's a thing there, and they've got this bulge, and at least it hasn't broken yet, because when it breaks, it's got to be huge. Are you aware of that? The Palmdale bulge.
Yeah, what you're referring to, I don't know the Palm. I've not been on the ground in Palmdale to see this, so I can only speak from having looked at field guides and the like. And I know that there's a beautiful exposure and a road cut of the San Andreas Fault in Palmdale, and I believe it has what's called a flower structure. which is kind of, it would look like a bulge. But also, in a larger sense, that segment of the San Andreas Fault has a bend in it, and I can see where maybe that's what you're referring to as the bulge as well. So I don't know in enough detail to really answer that specifically.
Yeah, and I think that's the other fellow or fellows who are from been in California. I think there's a Tehachapi is not far from there also, and that's
Yes.
Yeah.
I was not in the state at the time. My mother was still there for the Northridge earthquake. And she had a swimming pool behind her house, and she was first notified by the quake as the entire swimming pool hit the glass doors behind the house.
Oh, you know, the water.
Yes, the water.
Yeah,
water just flipped out like a giant wave, and she was sitting in her chair, and all of a sudden she felt a rumble, and the next thing she knew, the swimming pool was sloshing out and hitting walls.
Yeah, it was enormous, that quake. My parents were terrified for a long time after that.
Yeah. I think it was 1954, I'm not certain.
That was Tehachapi.
Okay, that was the one that I was a kid then, and I remember it was my father grabbed me on my shoulders, took me out of bed, got me downstairs, and at that time the normal philosophy was stand in a doorway. So he took me to a doorway, and we were standing in the front of the house, and the only thing I remember, even from that age, really well, is we were looking out the front of our house, and you could actually see the lawn, and you could see the street in front of our house rolling with what, at that time I wouldn't have known it, but rolling with sine waves. And it was the strangest thing I'd ever seen in my entire life.
Whereabouts were you living at the time?
A place called Highland Park. It's near Pasadena.
Oh, yeah, okay, I know that. Yeah, I think that was the big Tehachapi earthquake. I think the women's prison fell down at the time, something like that.
Yeah, it was strange. There was a bunch of damage. Our sidewalks in front of our house were all cracked up.
Yeah, they're still looking for the women.
Yeah, you know, one of the remarkable things about the internet these days and the spread of cell phone cameras is how much more likely we are to see these things captured on video. Right. I know I've talked about this in these office hours previously, but in teaching about geology, intro-level geology students, one of the most amazing things is just the sheer number of spectacular both earthquake videos and landslides, particularly. Those two sort of things, which are usually in fairly remote locations or just sort of things where people are so busy. There's so many people with cell phones who just the first reaction these days is to capture a little video of it. And it may be not still, high quality video, but there are just some spectacular videos that we just would not have had a decade ago.
Yeah, also with tsunamis. We get some incredible tsunami footage.
Yes.
Did any of you here see I think the Japanese put it out, about the frequency of earthquakes around the Ring of Fire over a period of time, and they showed the magnitude of the earthquakes, the duration of the earthquakes, the magnitude changed by size of the circle, and also the duration of those earthquakes, and it covered that.
Yeah, I saw this in a blog post recently. I think it was a year-long progression of the seismic energy released. You could see the big jump in March associated with the big Japan earthquake. Yes. I
mean, it was terrifying. Even watching the video was terrifying because it was so much greater magnitude. And then further south along the Ring of Fire, they had is it another area? Was it New Zealand?
Well, New Zealand has had a couple of recent quakes. It's not nearly as big as the quakes in Australia, but maybe if it's from the same video, I think there was a magnitude 7 or 8 in Fiji. And that Fiji.
This one looked like it was in the vicinity of New Guinea or something. But anyway, it's along that arc, and also quite big. And then of course, the other ones that were really big were in Chile that I saw. So anyway, I thought it was a fabulous graphic. It really impacted you emotionally. It's me. I'm still suffering from it.
Now, that magnitude 6 quake that you felt is certainly nothing to sneeze at, but what is Costa Rica's history as far as larger quakes? Do you know
they don't talk. You don't hear about much discussion about it, which rather surprises me because you've got the volcanoes, you've got the 3 plates coming together on the Pacific side, and they very carefully monitor this. The Costa Rican government very carefully monitors this. You can go on. There's one website I have where they show you what type of case, whether it's a slip fault or or something else. So they're watching it, but people don't talk about really huge quakes like you've seen in Mexico City or Chile or anything like that. But I think they probably get up to maybe 7.5.
Yeah.
Which is big enough.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what the segmentation of the fault zone is like in that region. I would certainly expect you can get, it's a subduction zone. You probably have capability to go up into the magnitude 8 range, although it might be that there's only smaller segments there and maybe 7 range.
Well, we're in the process of building this apartment that's overhead, and in view of that, let me see if I can show you what it looks like from underneath.
Sure.
So you get an idea of. I told the architect, I said, I don't want to go down with this house if there's an earthquake. Let me see if I can show you. To see it, there you see you can, I don't want you to see my face, so I want you to see the iron.
That's fine. Oh, yeah.
Can you?
I can see it now, yep.
Can you see it?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of metal. So, with big foundations, probably overkill, but I know what earthquakes can do. I'll be with you back together.
All right, well, folks, I've been going for about an hour and a half here. I don't want to cut the discussion off, but anybody else got anything pressing?
No, I don't, but I'd love to visit again.
I'll be doing these Geology Office Hours Hangouts every Monday and Thursday, 4 p.m. Central Time, 2200 GMT. So you can look forward to those. And if we ever get a really big geologic event worth discussing, we might have an ad hoc sort of hangout for that. But otherwise, just the Monday, Thursday schedule is what I'm going to try and stick to.
Yeah, you know what I'd like to do? Your name. I'd like to be able to send you a link to the seismic information on Costa Rica, if that would be of any value to you.
I'd love to have that. Yes, just plus Ron Schott, SCHOTT. I'm hosting the Hangout, so you can all just post it in the comments of the Hangout.
Oh, okay. Ron Schott. Oh, yes. When I see it, when it comes on my thing, I'll post it. Okay, that's very nice. Thank you, gentlemen.
It's great to have some perspective from Costa Rica, from a little bit more active tectonic area.
Yeah, right. Even if nothing much happens.
It's still nice to have the variety.
I put up a.
Okay, good deal. Okay, I'll see.
I put up a posting of my personal webpage, one of my web pages on the internet, and fundamentally there's 2,000 or 3,000 photographs out there of gems and minerals, and they're all free for use to any educational groups whatsoever.
I don't see your website here.
This is theimage.com.
Theimage.com, correct.
Okay, I can find
it's been out since 1996.
Okay.
Oh my God, it's an original. Okay.
Very close to this, yes.
All right, good. I'll see you gentlemen next time. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Very good.
Bye.
And for the rest of you, I'm going to speak off now. Dinner's calling me too. But just because I leave doesn't mean the conversation has to end. You guys can continue your conversation if you'd like. Again, I don't have overall control of the conversation. I'm going to cut the recording short, but feel free to keep on chatting if you'd like to. And I'll see you all on Thursday.
Thanks, Ron.
Nice talking to you all.
Okay. Cheers.
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 Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.